In this video, we're going to be learning exactly what conditional routing is and why we would use it, and then we're going to head over to Alteryx Designer to learn how to implement it in a workflow. Hello guys, welcome back. This is Archie from the Information Lab, and today we're going to be talking about exactly what conditional routing is and when we would use it. So we would use conditional routing when we have a workflow that answers more than one question, okay? And we can use radio buttons to allow the user to choose which part of the workflow runs. So the first thing that we need to do when trying to implement conditional routing is we need to separate the workflow into the two parts that answer the questions, okay? So here in my workflow, I've got a question, basically the highest customer in sales for each state, which is the first section, and the second one is highest customers in sales for each city. Okay, so what you need to do, you need to separate each of these sections into tool containers. What I should mention is interface tools cannot be in tool containers if you want to disable that particular container. Okay, so let me just run through one of these sections just so you can understand what's going on and to give a little bit more context. We have the sample superstore here. We then want to summarize based on and group by each particular state. We then use a crosstab tool, which feeds into a drop-down interface, and then the action acts on the particular filter, so the user can choose which state that they want to look at. We then sort in sales in descending order, and then we take the first row. And then we only select, so we now have the customer name and the sales for that particular person. Okay, and that's very similar for the bottom section. However, it's city rather than state. Okay, so now that we are happy that we've split the workflow into two different sections, what we now need to do is we need to look at the radio buttons. So what we're going to do, we're going to open our interface tool palette, and we're going to go over to radio button here. So the way radio buttons work is that when the radio button is selected, it's going to deselect the tool container that it's attached to. Okay, so let me just connect this one up first before I go into any further. Okay, and we can see in our action tool that it allows us to enable or disable a container. Okay, so when this is ticked, it's going to disable this top container and allow the bottom container to run. So when we think about the prompt that we want to put attached to this radio button, we need to, so when this is ticked, we need to allow the bottom one to run. So this one would be highest customer sales for each city. Because when this one is ticked, it allows this bottom workflow to run. Okay, so it might be a little bit difficult to get your head around at the start, but always remember it's kind of like the opposite of what you initially may think. And what we want to do, we want to make sure that we collapse group when deselected. Okay, and then the next thing that we want to do, we want to add another radio button and connect it to the container at the bottom. So we drag this onto our canvas and connect this like so. Okay, so with the action tool, we're happy for it to enable/disable container. And with the prompt, for the same reason as what I've just discussed, we wanted to talk about, I can't type and talk, sales in each state. I didn't do either then. Slays, okay? Highest customers slays in each state. That's absolutely fine. We understand what we mean. So now we're going to run this, and we're going to have a look at the magic wand to see what the user is going to interact with, what the user can see. So this is exactly what they can see. So we can see the radio buttons. And I should mention now that only one radio button is able to be selected at a time unless they're nested within each other. So that is why choosing one automatically deselects the other one. Okay, but the only problem that we have at the moment is we have a prompt and we also have both the questions, okay? And it would make a lot more sense that if one prompt was selected, if one radio button was selected, it will only show that one prompt that's attached to it. So what we're going to do, we're going to head over to our Interface Designer, which is just over here in View, Interface Designer, and we're going to group together the prompt with the necessary radio button. So at the moment, we have Select a City. And the way that we group them together is we use these arrow tools here. So we want to basically connect highest customer sales for each city with select a city. Okay, so we're going to go down, and the way that we group them is you can kind of see how now if you look a little bit closer, it's kind of within the same box. Okay, so now if we head over to the magic wand and have a look at this, we can see that when this is selected, one of them is removed. Okay, so when that's not selected, it doesn't even show us the prompt, which is a lot easier for the user to interact with. So the next one, for the same reason, we want to go down and group this, just like that. So now we've grouped the prompts with the necessary radio buttons. So now when we hit run and we click the magic wand, we drag that up, we can see that we have either the highest customers for each sales or the highest customers slays in each state. So now one of them kind of is hidden basically, and that is a lot easier for the user to interact with. Okay, so that is a very short video on why we would implement conditional routing and why it is useful to do so for the user's experience. So I just watched back the video and realized that it wasn't very clear as to why one of them was disappearing and not the other. And the reason for that is because if we look back on the radio tools and the way that we've configured them, let's just exit that. So this one has collapse group when deselected, whereas the other one doesn't have this one selected. So if we were to select this one, then both of them will be hidden at the necessary times. So if we have a look here, I think I need to run my workflow. So now if we have a look, then one of them is hidden accordingly. Okay, so that was just a little bit of a clarification because I understood how that may have been confusing. Okay, thank you.